Hello and welcome again to Bloodworth Miniatures. My name is Kyle and today we're taking a look at assembling the Silent King, as well as reviewing his rules and how he may fit into your army. So, as I mentioned, I was going to go over some of the construction details and also the rules. So I guess the first thing I want to start off with is that the Silent King is kind of like the craziest model that I've dealt with, like both in terms of its rules and just putting the model together. I have put together like knights, and this feels more complicated. And just the sheer number of rules that the Silent King has is kind of crazy as well. So there's two sprues that are identical, and then there's one sprue that has all of the sort of like unique pieces on it. So for a lot of the construction of the model, it feels like you're building like a mirror for like the floating chariot. It's all essentially the same stuff. The menhirs, the triarchal menhirs, they're the little floaty walls. They're again pretty, symmetrical to put together, but all of the model is like balancing on these little like tendrils of energy, like very thin pieces of plastic. It's like the whole thing is kind of precarious. It feels like even when it's fully put together and all glued down, it feels a bit unstable. But I mean, I don't think that it's actually at risk of falling over. But it's just one of those models where you feel a little anxious with it because there's so many little small pieces. The other thing is specifically putting together the pharaons and Szarekh himself are really fiddly. Like the book recommends like you assemble the front part of their chest and their arms first, and then to attach their legs. And I found like when I was doing that it was very challenging to sort of line everything up, especially for adding the heads on. Because there's two small pieces on the left and right of their heads that are attached inside the chest to the arms, and they need to sort of like secure to the side of their head. So I found that there was a couple of times where I needed to go back and re-glue some things and reline things up. So and their little talbards like hanging down like on the front of their like groin areas. They're the very small amount of contact. I tried using like Tamiya's like plastic glue, and I found that during the process of painting them that they wanted to fall off, so I ended up having to use super glue to hold those in place. So those are sort of my tips for assembly, as far as how you can make the assembly a little bit easier on yourself. I would, follow the instructions up until you get to the pharaon and Szarekh, and then I'd probably actually start at the legs, put the legs together, then do the arm and chest, and then the head, and then do the talbard at the very end, something like that. And you probably find to use plastic glue for everything except the little talbards, just for security. But yeah, so that's that. So as far as the actual stat lines go for the Silent King, he's got the two triarchal menhirs. They've got 8-inch movement, 6 up weapon skill, a 2 up ballistic skill, 5 strength, 7 toughness, 5 wounds each. They have 1 attack and leadership 10, not that really matters, and the save is a 3 up. Now for the for Szarekh himself, as long as he has 9 or more remaining wounds, he has an 8-inch movement speed. He's got a 2-up weapon skill, a 2-up ballistic skill, 5 strength, 7 toughness, and 16 wounds. He has 6 attacks, 10 leadership, again not super relevant, and a 3-up save. So, now when you take a look at his, so when he's 5 to 8 wounds, he goes down to 6 movement. He's still 2-up and 2-up, still 5 and 7. And then he goes down to only having 4 attacks, 10 leadership, and his save stays the same. If he's 1 to 4 wounds, his movement goes down to 4. He's still 2-up and a 2-up, 5 and 7, and then he goes down to 2 attacks. The other thing that happens when he goes down through these different wound brackets is he loses access to the different pharaons. So we'll go through that a little bit here with the weapons. So with the weapons, the Triarchal Menhirs have an Annihilator Beam. It's 36-inch range, heavy 1, strength 12, AP -4, damage 6. This is like a tank killer for sure. This is very, very strong against vehicles, especially because of the 2-up ballistic skills. So unless you're rolling 1s, you're probably hitting. Unless you're rolling 1s, you're probably wounding. AP -4, they might not even get a save. It's a very strong weapon. As far as shooting goes, there's also the Scepter of Eternal Glory. So that's Sazerakh's staff. It's got a shooting and a melee profile. So shooting profile is assault 3, range 24, assault 3, strength 8, AP -3, damage 2. This is pretty strong. Like, you can deal some damage to vehicles with this. You can definitely deal damage to infantry or characters with this. It's assault 3, so if you need to close a gap, I mean, with a 24-inch range, you probably don't need to close a gap, but if you did, you could. There's the Staff of Stars shooting. It's also 24-inch range. It's assault 9, strength 6, AP -2, 1 damage. This is probably you shoot this at infantry, because its strength is higher than infantry. AP -2, you're probably turning 3 or 4 up saves into 5 or 6 up saves, and it's damage 1, so it's going to be taking out most infantry. You could probably take out a group of 5 guys pretty consistently if you roll well. So then we go and look at the Staff of Eternal Glory for melee. This is the one where he's got 6 attacks when he's at full profile. It's strength +4, so strength 7. So it's strength 5, sorry. So it goes up to strength 9. So you're beating out most vehicles with it. AP -3 and 2 damage. There's the Staff of Stars melee. So this is the one of the Pharaon's weapons. So each time the bearer fights, it makes 3 additional attacks with this weapon, and no more than 3 attacks can be made with this weapon. So this is the user strength, AP -2, damage 1. So this is the one that you probably throw again into infantry. The Staff of Stars is better against infantry for both shooting and the melee. And then there's their Scythe of Dust, strength +3, which puts it up to 10, AP -4. And damage 3. Again, each time the bearer fights, it makes 4 additional attacks with this weapon, and no more than 4 attacks can be made with this weapon. This is really strong, again, against vehicles. It's strong against characters, like multi-wound models, for sure. So it's got a lot going for it. When we take a look at these weapon profiles, we can see basically that the Silent King has weapons that are designed specifically for dealing with vehicles, specifically for dealing with multi-wound models, and specifically for dealing with infantry or lower wound models with lower saves. So it's got and all the like weapons like for shooting are like at least strength 6, so it's got really good shooting. Basically, the one downside with the Annihilator beam is it's attached to the Triarchal Menhirs, and they only have 5 wounds and a 3-up save. So if you're going on turn 2 and somebody takes out the Menhirs, then you might not ever get a chance to shoot the heavy one strength 12 weapon that you have. And the way the rules work with the Silent King is that basically the more wounds he takes, the less shooting and melee he has. So let's take a look at some of the abilities. So he's got Living Metal and Command Protocols. So Living Metal, all multi-wound Necrons have Living Metal. So at the beginning of the command phase, they regain 1 lost wound, and Command Protocols as well. There's the Knocklith Beacon. So in your opponent's psychic phase, Szarekh can attempt to deny 1 psychic powers if he were a psyker. That's, that by itself is a really strong ability. Most Necrons don't have access to anything like that. There's the Obscience Generators. So at the start of the fight phase, if any enemy units are within engagement range of Szarekh, then until the end of the phase, those units cannot fight until after all eligible units from your army have done so. So he's got a fight's last aura for anything that is in engagement range of him. So that's really strong because you want to get your melee attacks off. You don't want to get profiled during the combat phase before you get a chance to attack. So there's the Pharaoh of the Stars aura. While friendly Necron's core unit or Triarch Patreon's unit is within 6 inches of Szarekh, each time a ranged attack is made by a model in that unit, you can re-roll the hit roll. So he's got a re-roll aura. That's one of the Pharaons is giving that. And then there's the Pharaon of Blades aura. While friendly Necron core unit or Triarch Patreon's unit is within 6 inches of Szarekh, each time a melee attack is made by a model in that unit, you can re-roll the wound roll. So he also improves the ability to deal wounds. It's really strong. I wish that it applied to the new Destroyer Cult units, since that's probably the strongest melee unit the Necrons have. But what are you gonna do? Like, he's already up, like even up into, I'm like halfway through his rules, and he's already quite good. So there's Relentless March aura. While friendly Necron's core or Triarch Patreon's units within 6 inches of Szarekh, each time that unit is selected to make a normal move or advance unit until the end of the phase, add 1 to the move characteristics of model in that unit. So your guys are moving a bit faster if he's nearby. My Will Be Done. In your command phase, you can select 1 friendly Necron's core or 1 Triarch Patreon's unit within 9 inches of Szarekh until the start of your next command phase. Each time that model in that unit makes an attack, add 1 to the attack's hit roll. Each unit can only be selected for this ability once per phase. And then it's got Pharaon. This model can use My Will Be Done 1 additional time. So you can choose 2 core units or 2 Triarch Patreon units that are within 9 inches of Szarekh and give them +1 to their attack's hit roll, which is pretty good. They have Voice of the Triarch once per battle. At the start of any battle round, if Szarekh is on the battlefield, he can alter your command protocols. If he does, the command protocol that you did not assign to any battle rounds before the battle becomes active for your army for that battle round instead of the one you assigned to it. So this can be really good strategically. Occasionally your opponent's going to do things that you weren't thinking of, and you can switch things around. Triarchal Menhir. So while this contains any Triarchal Menhir models, it does not count as a character for the purposes of Lookout Serve rule. And each time an attack successfully wounds this unit, that attack must be allocated to one of those models. The destruction of the Triarchal Menhir is ignored for the purposes of morale tests. If Szarekh is ever destroyed, any remaining Triarchal Menhirs in this unit are also destroyed. So basically, he doesn't get the benefits of Lookout Sir as long as he has them in here. So it doesn't matter how many models you put in front of him, he can still be targeted so people can shoot the Menhirs down. So as I mentioned before, there is a scenario where you don't ever get to use your anti-tank weapon because it gets blown off the board before you have a chance. This is a big one here. The Silent King. If your army is battle forward, Szarekh must be your army's warlord. You receive 3 additional command points if Szarekh is your warlord. So you put him in a Supreme Command detachment because he's a character warlord model, so that costs no CP. And then he also gives you 3 CP. So it kind of puts you at a big advantage just by taking him. And it's, it's pretty substantial. Transtemporal Force Field. Models in this unit have a 4-up invul save. Really important because your enemy's probably going to be shooting you with plasma or melta or any other sort of like anti-tank, multi-wound weapons that they have. So without that 4-up invul save, this model would not survive very long. Preservative Auto Torpor. If Szarekh has 8 or fewer wounds remaining, it cannot make attacks with the Staff of Stars and loses the Pharaoh of Stars ability. If Szarekh has 4 or fewer wounds remaining, it cannot make attacks with the Scythe of Dust and loses the Pharaoh of Blades ability. So this is what I was talking about when you profile it. It's basically the same as treating the Pharaons who are riding on the little balconies to the left and right of Szarekh as being like essentially destroyed or out of commission. So it makes sense, like profile wise, and it also is like very sort of a fluffy rule that basically this model that has 3 guys standing on it, like as it takes damage, those guys are not able to function, is pretty interesting. But as far as when you're in combat, getting profiled and then losing a bunch of your attacks, like a lot of the time with like a regular tank or something, if it loses its attacks, it loses a couple of attacks. Whereas with this one, if you get profiled, you lose 2 attacks off of Szarekh, and then you also lose like the 4 attacks that are made by the Scythe of Dust and or the 3 attacks that are made by the Staff of Stars. So, when you're down in that bracket of only having a few wounds left, it's not quite as strong. The upside is if you're just like on the cusp of a profile and you have living metal and you move into your phase and go up a profile, you do get access to those things back. So that's good. And then there's Vengeance of the Unchained. So when Szarekh is destroyed, roll a d6 before removing it from play. On a 4-up, it explodes. Each unit within 2d6, that's 2d6 for the range, suffers d6 mortal wounds. So you can kind of throw him into your enemy line and hope that he just blows up and does like a buttload of damage to them. That is definitely an option. He's got the keywords Necron, Szarekh, Vehicle, Character, Fly, so he can fly over terrain. Supreme Commander, Pharaon, Noble, Dynastic Agent, so he can go with any of the dynasties. The Silent King, Szarekh, and he's got the Menhirs have Vehicle, Fly, Dynastic Agent, the Silent King, and Triarchal Menhirs. So they're, the Menhirs can fly around too. They do count as vehicles, which means if they move, they can still shoot their heavy weapons without a penalty. It's overall, I'd say this model is crazy. It's crazy to put it together. Like, it's absolutely bananas putting it together. Some of these pieces are so like intricate and complex to assemble, including the Pharaons and Szarekh himself. And what he has to offer on the battlefield is nuts. Like, he's got good shooting, he's got good melee, he's got good keywords, he has a good save, he has good auras, He's got a Fight's Last aura. He's got like auras that improve the Necron's core units. And he can even change your battle protocols once and gives you extra command points. So I'd say overall, he's, I wouldn't necessarily say he's an auto-include, just because he doesn't buff up like Destroyer Cults, and he doesn't buff up Scarab Swarms. So if you're trying to go the Swarms route, or you're trying to go the Destroyers route, you're not going to necessarily get the same benefit out of this as, as you might with something that's more geared towards those kinds of strategies. But I'd say if you have a lot of core units, he's definitely an auto-include because of how much he can do for your core units. If you're running Trio Praetorians, it's, they get buffed by him, which is really good. And I'd say he's definitely worth consideration for your list. And that's not including the fact that, after you've assembled this very intricate and complex model, you have a very beautiful model when you're done. Like, it is a very aesthetically pleasing model. There's a lot going on with the in and outs of the model, the way the negative space frames it. It's a really pretty model and makes for an excellent centerpiece in an army. And again, it has so much going for it. I can't see why it wouldn't be a reasonable consideration to include in your list. Thanks for joining me today while we put together the Silent King and reviewed the rules. Don't forget to check out my Patreon and my Instagram. I appreciate if you put in a like, subscribe, or even ring the bell notification. That would be fantastic. It helps me out a lot. Remember that you and your hobby time is worth it.